The Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Real Doctor Who fans with real Doctor Who opinions.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast, a podcast dedicated to discussing and reviewing all things Doctor Who, Big Finish, and other science fiction stuff that tickles our fancy. In this episode, because of some of the pitfalls, because of some of the discussions, I think we need one last time to take a critical look at RTD's second run as showrunner and executive producer. Now, that being said, I am going to try to be as well balanced as possible, and I'm going to be taking a look at some unwell balanced people in the entirety of everything, because I do think it is important to, have a critical aspect, but also, a well polished argument. And with that being said, I guess without further ado, I'm going to get underway. So first, I think one of the things that we need to do is initially look back at his first era. And as I was going through a lot of the, Ninth Doctor, 10th Doctor episodes, I want to almost pose a question. Oh, sorry. I probably should say email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. Tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. Like wherever you do, write something in the Facebook. Anyway, not Facebook. Write something in YouTube and we will respond. I do look forward to having email and responses. I'd love to talk about to you, the fans of the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Anyway, that being said, now let's go back to what I was originally doing, and that is looking at the first RTD go round. Now, I want to say something that is possibly not, maybe a controversial. Do I want to say controversial? I'll say controversial. I don't think RTD did a great job as the writer, as showrunner. He did a lot of setup, but I believe a lot of the people that he had around him during the first era is what made his first go round so successful. As we look at season one in 2005, you have the introduction or the reintroduction of the Doctor in the episode of Rose. We have Rose Tyler, the new companion, and it is a good setup. We do get the great Time War, the last of the Time Lords, as a way to, isolate the Doctor and not go into all of the lore, which I do think was super important early on in the show. Take notes, Chris Chibnall and RCD Part 2. Take notes. Now, I think it was very smart to do that initially so that we could reestablish this world. And then after some great monumental strives and stuff like that, stuff that Stephen Moffat was doing, we could get Gallifrey back. And then we could possibly do stuff with the Time Lords and also maybe spin-off series. But that being said, the second episode, The End of the World. Now, we had the introduction of Cassandra, which I not necessarily, enjoyed or whatnot. That is what he did. Now, when we go to the next episodes that Russell T Davies wrote, Aliens of London, World War III, we have the Slovene. They're basically, this was a inroads in getting families in on Doctor Who, a family show, family appointment viewing, because the Slovene for me is, luckily a little while later, we did get the Sarah Jane Adventures, but is very Sarah Jane, over the top acting, constant fart stuff that was going on. It's not my favorite stories. We get the darker Dalek story, again, not written by RTD, from an idea from Robert Sherwin, who did this similar story to that in Big Finish. Then we get the Long Game, which I don't actually recall. Oh no, that was a setup for Satellite 5. Okay, which is again very important regarding series 1. Then we get, Paul Cornell, and then Stephen Moffat wrote the next 2. And then we have Boomtown, which is again, we have the Slovene once again Bad Wolf is scattered throughout all of the ones that RTD not only wrote, but also the ones that, all the other writers in series one wrote. Then, of course, we have the epic conclusion of Bad Wolf Parting the Ways, where we have the reveal of the Daleks. We're back on Satellite 5, and it is a fantastic reveal because it was set up. We didn't have some stupid Dalek breaking the fourth wall. We didn't have some stupid Dalek that, needed to anagram their name to some sort of Susan-like character or Ian. Whatever. Then we get the 10th Doctor, the regeneration to the 10th Doctor, Christmas Invasion. I will say probably one of the weakest Christmas stories, only next to The Church on Ruby Road. Then we have New Earth, which again reintroduces us to Cassandra. We also have the Tooth and Claw, and Christmas Invasion also set up Torchwood for the big bad or one of the big bads at the very end of the series. Again, Stephen Moffat, Girl at the Fireplace. We have The Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, written by Tom McRae, who again, that was done to set up the final conclusion to series 2. Mark Gatiss' Not So Great Idiot's Lantern, The Impossible Planet, Satan's Pit. Again, Matt Jones. And then we have Love and Monsters, which I do probably should be playing the fake Big Finish box set teaser that I created. We have the Fear Her, which let's all fear that one. And then we have the Army of Ghosts, Doomsday, which again, you could say sets up everything that happened in Series 1 as well as Series 2 with the Daleks in Series 1, as well as the return of the Daleks, the Cybermen, and also the Torchwood at the very end of that. Runaway Bride, I will say, as much as I do like Donna Noble, I find that story kind of is slow paced, but it does set up stuff for Series 4. Notice the connections that I'm not sure either A, RTD had, or B, how intuitive his writing was. We have Smith and Jones, which introduces us to Martha Jones as a new companion. Martha Jones, okay companion, constantly brooding and sad because Rose Tyler is, she has a crush on the Doctor, and the Doctor has this longingness for Rose. Gareth Roberts does Shakespeare Code. Gridlock reintroduces us. RTD brings back the Macra. However, the Macra are not acting the way that they normally act, so it's only kind of like fitting is that RTD's go-to when it's not, it doesn't have to do with the Daleks or the Cybermen. He just kind of takes a classic monster villain and then changes them utterly completely. We have the 2-part Dalek story, which is not good. The Lazarus Experiment, still not done by RTD. 42, Chris Chibnall's 24 inspired script where it takes place in real time. Human Nature, Family Blood, done by Paula Cornell, which again, he used his idea from the book. We have Blink, which is done masterfully. Again, Stephen Moffat. Stephen Moffat takes that idea and uses it later in his run. Then we have the 3-part epic conclusion with the, Saxon, Mr. Saxon or whatnot. Peter Saxon. Peter Saxon. That sounds like a good name. With the master reveal in Utopia, Sounds of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords. And so I've always struggled, besides Blink, I've really always struggled to like Series 3 and kind of Series 2. Series 4 is where RTD is just masterfully, everything is done quite well. My favorite Christmas special, Voyage of the Damned, is fantastic. The introduction of Donna Noble in Partners in Crime. Then you have a whole bunch of written stuff by other writers, even though we do have the constant Rose showing up as well as the bees going and the planets disappearing. But it is not until midnight in episode 10 of series 4 that Russell T Davies actually starts writing for the show again. A lot of people like that. I do not. Turn Left is masterfully done and is probably the far superior one compared to Midnight. Soul and Earth Journey's End is basically the epic conclusion of everybody almost saying goodbye to the 10th Doctor. And then we get the specials. And I find These specials, hit and miss. Waters of Mars was fantastically a hit, co-written by RTD with Phil Ford. RTD did co-write with Planet of the Dead with Gareth Roberts, but again, it's really hit and miss in the specials, and then we don't see RTD again until you could almost say Big Finish when we had the his adaptation that was done. Then RTD Part 2 took over, and we get the 60th special where, we do have the use of Pat Mills' comic, The Star Beast, Wild Blue Yonder, which again, some people claim that that is a kind of like a successor to Midnight or very close to Midnight. Disagree. It is more like The Thing, which I do love. Giggle really sucked. And then we get the introduction of the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa, right there. And that is where we look to take our perspective of the RTD Part 2 era right there. So I guess you could say, what has changed? Well, we kind of got new actors. We got reintroduced to Donna Noble. We got reintroduced to the 10th Doctor with the 14th Doctor's face. But the 14th Doctor was acting quite odd, kind of crushing on Isaac Newton. We got the race swap of Isaac Newton. We have Mavity, that is for some reason a thing. We did not, for some reason, we had the Celestial Toymaker, which again, if you go back to RTD Part 1, besides the Daleks and the Cybermen, some of his villains don't act the same. You have Peter Saxon / the Master, near insane when we first see him in Series 3, which again makes like the conclusion of Series 3 less than desirable and is not a high rewatch for me compared to, I guess you could say, the rest of them are Dalek and / Cybermen's finales, which are fantastic because they act like they are supposed to act. They behave accordingly. You don't have some loose cannon weirdo, i.e., the Saxon, the John Sims master, as well as, RTD or Chris Chibnall took some notes and inspiration for that and just decided to do the same thing with Sasha Dewan. Poor Sasha Dewan. And then we have again the Macra didn't really act that, Macra-y. With this, we have the Celestial Toymaker, which for some reason, once he got out of his universe, was able to connect, control, and manipulate the real world, even though I thought he was in his own realm. So again, and then we have the oddity that was Sutek. We have the what the heck was that moment with Omega? Ronnie is nowhere near the way that Ronnie is. And so I feel as though that is something that is changed and has really made RTD era part 2 a massive struggle. I'm going to, in the future, look at and go through there's a question that I saw somewhere, and it's New Who has a new monster challenge. And I'll just give you a hint for what that's going to be. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Again, email, tweet the show, DM the show, give us some feedback on YouTube, whatever. So we have that. Then we have the whole, well, so I saw this on Twitter. And, if you ever want to, find people like screaming at each other, just go to Twitter. It's a riot. Somebody took a Superman meme and just turned it into Doctor Who. And it says Doctor Who Today. So it says some kid drooling, eyes wide open, watching the William Hartnell Doctor. And the TV speaks and says, "Respect minorities, my dear." And the kid goes, "Doctor." And then 2025, "Respect minorities, babe." And then that same kid is now, raging, saying, "They ruined it. They woke trash, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't like this when I was a kid." Well, first off, everything is not the way it was when you're a kid. Second, I, and here is where I went down the rabbit hole. Somebody replied to the person who posted that meme saying, you idiots never watched the original. Basically insinuating that maybe the stories have never changed. All right. And you know what? Perhaps you are right. Somebody came in and said, no, the writing is terrible. The Doctor has no redeeming qualities, and the show is dead. Now, in my retort to that person who posted that, we're going to call him Alex. The writing is terrible. Agreed. Myself and Liam have had struggles with Stephen Moffat's writing near the very end. We've constantly had struggles with Chris Chibnall's writing. And I personally have had lots of struggles with RTD Part Two's writing and leadership. Now, to say the Doctor, the 15th Doctor, has no redeeming qualities, I to me, that is something that was done so that you could instill, be controversial. No. Now, in the Interstellar Song Contest, did the Doctor act the way he did? No. But for some reason, his companion, who'd only been with him for 5 adventures or less, knew exactly that he's not acting the way he normally does. So hopefully that there's going to be more adventures so that makes sense. Um, but, the 13th Doctor, moral compass all over the place. And then the show is dead. I think that is something just to stir the pot. Now, this is where everything really gets fun, in my opinion. So it says, no. So the person who wrote this, we're calling him Alex, says that, the writing's terrible. The Doctor has no redeeming qualities. The show is dead. So Billy comes in and says, dude, you don't watch the show and your issues is him being a black actor. Now, whoa, the instant you do that and there is no history of saying this or that, and I've looked at his timeline and he doesn't, you are putting on him something that is unjust and unfair. And basically, you've already lost the debate. If that's the only thing you can do is bring up something that was never said by this person ever and claim that is because you do not like him because the main actor is black and that you only wanted a straight white guy. So yeah, Billy continues and just says that, your issue is him being a black actor because of your bigotry, and you only want the straight white guy because of the show has focused on it. It isn't about bad writing nor the writing. We have redeeming qualities, or he has redeeming qualities. It's us that you are just it's it us that you are just racist. Okay. So then Alex retorts and says, "What are his redeeming qualities, Billy?" And Billy says, "Stupid, you literally don't even want to hear it, regardless of what I say, because uh, you will just call real fans shills because you aren't a fan of Doctor Who." Now, again, does this happen? Yes. Does this happen on both sides? Yes. But it almost sounds like throwing haymakers for no reason but just to do it. There is no basis for this. And to not eat to call him a bigot and racist and then say that I'm not even gonna bother with my time because or your time, or I'm not even gonna bother replying to you because it's not worth my time, even though I'm currently replying to you. I'm not gonna give you the satisfaction of how I actually feel. To me, that almost sounds like somebody who hasn't really watched the show, possibly. So then a third party comes in and says, "Hey, answer his question." And he says, "Redeeming qualities, Billy. I've asked twice." And then he just says, "Still waiting for y'all to explain woke and explain what the bad is without being racist. You're kind of being a bigot." And it's just, that's what Billy said. He has no foot to stand on. All he can do is throw insults. And that is the shame of, I believe, possibly the Chris Chibnall era and the art. I do say possibly because there is there is a lot that's not good. And also, possibly what is the RTD era is we're beyond actually conversing with each other at times. It is okay to disagree. Liam loves the Interstellar Song Contest. I will never like the Interstellar Song Contest. It is not a good episode. See our review of it on episode 379 of the Doctor Who Alhambra podcast as I retort and share my whatever that was. But at least Liam heard me and I heard him. He really liked it. Good. But to be able to just throw haymakers and just say, you're not a fan, you're also a bigot, you're also this, you're also this, and I'm not going to bother sharing my rationale. And it goes for both sides. It goes for both sides too. So, but then, and then you have a couple people who come in and just basically say, and there's one that is really quite interesting. So it basically just says, there's a couple of people call him a tourist. So there are people who are new fans, a tourist. And, yes and no. Who is to say when you became a fan and, how long you've held your fan card for? I was watching a YouTube video about somebody complaining about somebody's other review of some comics. And they just said, hey, and the person that I used to listen to both of them, I have ceased listening to most of them because one wanted to claim and cry SJWs, which again, I hate that word so much. And then now that person has come around and just said, you know what? Maybe things are not as bad as they were. There's actually a lot of good stories. There's a lot of good comics. And the other person that I used to watch a lot of basically wants to rage video, wants to just do the controversial video for the reason to gain an audience and to make a living. Now, props to that person. I cannot be that phony. He claims that, all of his opinions um, are his own and he stands by them. However, when you take a step back and you look at some of the doublespeak where he'll say something like, Batman was great. Batman was great under Tom King. Batman was never really great from Tom King. It actually struggled after, the first arc. Oh, actually, it struggled halfway in the arc. When you are constantly, if people don't pay attention to what you say, you can make up anything that you want. Consistency is so important. And that is why the Doctor Who Alhambra podcast, in my opinion, is the best Doctor Who podcast on earth because we can be wrong. We can change. We can admit this. But if we constantly um, keep on moving the goalposts, you'll never be able to understand what we really believe, and you'll never be able to be expecting any consistency from us. And I do believe consistency is super important. Another person who, again, oh, sorry. So then in this thing, the first guy I was talking about was basically basically called the YouTuber who does outrage stuff a tourist in the comic book world because he has not been reading as long as he has. He has been reading, the first guy has been reading since, his, preteens. And the second guy who does these outrage videos only picked up reading comic books the past 15 years. And he's been doing YouTube for about 8 now. Kind of successful channel, but still, if you're only making videos to outrage people, like for example, the Superman movie, according to everybody, it's people really like it or they don't, or it's okay. The people that are doing outrage videos saying it's a failure. What is their basis? Though they don't like it. They claim Barbie was a failure and then it made $1 billion. And then they had to, go back and just say, hey, it just wasn't for me. How about you just start off with, it wasn't for me. Let's go from there. But to claim it a failure on day one or week one is ridiculous. Same thing with Doctor Who as well, too. Anyway, one more thing. And this is an interesting thing that fans were doing. So I found somebody who was claiming to, was being accused of being a tourist in the Doctor Who fandom. And they claim that, well, in the classic series, there are so many, most of the people of color are villains. And they dared people to retort that. And they must have they must have Googled villains in Doctor Who in the classic era because, they had Toberman, which you could say was more of a henchman, but was able to turn around, not necessarily a villain. You had, they, what did they do? They had the psychic from, was it Invasion of the Spiders? No, I can't remember. Anyway, they had her, and then as I was looking at some of them, they just found people of color and said that this person was a villain, and one of them was the Mavellans. I'm sorry, the Mavellans are not the villain. Yes, you can be called a tourist if you decide to Google Doctor Who villains and you use Mavellans as one of your crutches. And so I feel as though as a fandom, there's a lot of things that are fractured, but there's a lot of people that just don't know and they just want to call people names and to label things horribly. And I do think that that is an issue with RTD Part 2. Now, I did ask ChatGPT about this question, and I think it's quite interesting. Let me. So I asked ChatGPT, what is the general consensus of the second era of Russell T Davies as showrunner for Doctor Who? Find articles, blogs, Twitter comments, and show the positive and negatives focusing on RTD's second tenure as showrunner. And so this is what they came up with. So it says, what critics and fans praise. So it says character focusing and casting. Now, I think that this is quite interesting because I think it goes both ways. They shout out Shudi Gatwa and Veranda Sethu. However, my one question that I constantly will be having for a long time is who had the job before Shudi Gatwa? Because of RTD's kind of messaging in this second go round, and because of some of his comments about how he only sees the world as queer and this is normal for him or whatnot, did Shudi Gatwa check the box because he was a better actor, or did he tick the box because he ticked more boxes? And because of RTD's constant talk about representation and all this other stuff, I'm actually leaning towards the latter. But that is just my opinion. I don't know. I don't know what is in his heart. I don't know what is in his mind. I don't know why he did it. I do know that I don't think Shudi Gatwa is the best doctor. And you can even say this because I think he realized it was not a good role for him for two reasons. First off, he was not willing to wait around, which I don't blame him. But you didn't have to end the show. Now, if it was going to take about 10 years to be rebooted and you're like, okay, we're going to do more of a less than a soft reboot. We're going to do a little bit more hard reboot. Then yeah, I get it. However, he also was saying how old he is and the role was hard on him. These articles came out, at least I saw a couple of them just the other day, and that is sad. If you're a 30-something-year-old man who looks to be in relatively good shape, and you are complaining about how rigorous it was for you, I'm gonna I hope that those are fake muscles. You went to some sort of Chinese camp and got, fake muscle inserts because it doesn't make sense. I hope you never go to a gym. Please don't run. I mean, according to what I saw on Boom, Shudi Gatwa does not know how to run, actually. Or he doesn't know how to act run. Either way. Brenda Sethu, okay, not the best character, and then she got easily forgotten in the last episode. Okay. Then it says, ChatGPT says, Davies' ambition shown in episodes like Robot Revolution. sure, which brims the high concept idea and fearless narrative style, chaotic, and some undeniably bold moves. And, some movie blog. And it discussed as inclusivity and broad scope. It says critics and outlets celebrated RTD's commitment to representation, featuring the show's first Black Doctor. Again, I do have a massive question. First major trans character, which is weird because the Doctor was previously the 13th Doctor, a female, and this trans character decided to lecture the Doctor on not knowing what it is to be a girl, even though I know she probably didn't know. But RTD almost wrote that scene as if he didn't even know, which would work. I mean, how many people watched the Chris Chibnall era? I mean, besides the first episode. And he made it clear that diversity is simply a reflection of life, not political posturing. RTD Part 1, yes, I would agree with that. RTD Part 2, disagree with that statement right there. And it says RTD's defenders argue that inclusivity enriches storytelling. Now, if it is good, now I know Liam likes the story and the web or whatever it's called. I have no idea what happened in that story. Did not speak to me at all. Did not really enjoy that story at all. I didn't think it was good. I think it could have been better if the guy who wrote the story was actually able to write the story that he wanted, not the story that he was told to write. Almost like, hey, you're a black guy. Write this story. Well, I was actually thinking of, no, this story. The show's high points, according to ChatGPT, scanning the web, episodes like Rose Ailing Ellis's entry stood out as examples of what Davies could do. Agree and disagree. Rose Ailing Ellis's episode in The Well was good, but also came off so whiny. She claimed to be the victim when you are the lone survivor and people either had their neck broken or they were shot, and you're just the one that's left standing, and people are talking behind your back, and she starts crying that people have constantly done that for you. It's not that they're doing it to you because you're deaf. They're doing it to you because you are kind of suspicious. And it's almost like they wanted to preach that people treat uh, deaf people differently. However, read the room, read the situation. There's a reason why you're being treated like that. If it was Ruby Sunday and she was the lone survivor, she should be treated like that. If it was Veranda Sethu's character, she should be treated like that. It has nothing to do with your disability. It has only what to do with how you are found. And then it says reviewers note that in abstract, RTD's second run remains the more intuitive and enjoyable than the Chris Chibnall era. I don't know. Currently, I'm on the fence of Chris Chibnall fractured the show and RTD took a jackhammer to the show. Currently. All right. And so, according to this, what did the fans and critics have to say regarding the show in a negative outlook? Overstuffed plot and heavy messaging. Now, some people will say that there's always been messaging, yes, but and I think everything has to go with when you look at some of the RTD Part 1, some of the stories that occurred in New Earth, not New Earth, the other one with season 2. I can't remember. The human experimentation. It was done on an alien planet, done with aliens, and things were a little bit less heavy-handed because it was a little bit more abstract. If they were to redo that episode today, I feel as though it would be done in a hospital with some sort of evil, dictator-like person, also trying to probably racially cleanse everything too. Again, I think there's way too heavy messaging. Take a step back. Learn from what you did successfully in your first era. Let's not modify and morph everything differently. Familiar formula, less innovation. So this one is RTD storytelling structure, standalone episodes trailing into two-part finales with classic villains felt too familiar. I'm fine with that. It was the actual two-part finales that sucked because he did the same thing that he did with the first one. He did with the second one. Now, granted, you can look at his first run, and it was basically almost carbon copy. But I feel as though there were better hints out there with the Rose that was coming from in her Dimension canon. You had Bad Wolf. You didn't have some wolf, this naughty wolf, you're naughty wolf, breaking the fourth wall, staring at the audience. You had a puzzle. With the Saxon, you really had a puzzle. And then with, you have the one chick who broke the fourth wall. You have the one chick that had the same name as his granddaughter. You even teased the granddaughter and then altered everything. I just don't think it was done. The concepts were not done well or were not complete. And one other comment is the Earth thing. It says it's over dependent on RTD scripts. It says basically out of the 13 episodes, 10 of them were done and written by RTD with Deus Ex Machina endings. So fans' frustrations online, according to ChatGPT, Reddit says, I hate Russell T Davies because he was terrible at his job. 2 or 3 good episodes don't make up for countless episodes of dross. Another person says he has a habit of writing himself into a corner, then pulling the Deus Ex Machina to get out of it. Digital Spice expressed regrets that RTD's return fell short of expectation, that his first era level of writing did not appear in his second, or whatever reason he seemed to be struggling with this time round. So very interesting aspect altogether. A lot of stuff. Character and casting, the overview. Strong performance by Gatwa and Sethu are the praise. Still lacking in long-term emotional resonance are the critics. Inclusivity, bold and foundational. And then the critics felt overshadowed the actual narrative focus. Interesting. I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. Story and ambition, creative, high concept, visually compelling. Critics, overstuffed, melodramatic, overfamiliar structure, and writing team. RTD brings singular vision is the praise. And critics says resilience on RTD himself and limited new voices leads to formulaic plots. So that is the, I guess you could say, the end of this episode. I'm going to end this right here. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. What are your thoughts? What are the highs? What are the lows? Again, as we look at the critical look back at his second run, we've done the whole episode 379, which was myself and Liam discussing and reviewing all things season 2. Then we also had the RTD part 2 retrospective and the Doctor Who magazine from episode 30, as well as some of the other things. What are your thoughts? We're going to be looking at looking at the new Who. We're going to start looking more at classic stuff, some more fun topics that are, fun. Talking about controversy, talking about this, less than fun. So until next time, I hope, grab your sonic screwdrivers, fix something, and until next time, I will see you in time.
You have been listening to the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Doctor Who is owned and trademarked by the BBC. Doctor Who Alhambra is not affiliated with the BBC or Big Finish. No infringement is intended. Visit our website at alhambrapodcast.weebly.com or email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. Tweet us at Alhambra Podcast. That is ALHAMBRA Podcast. Thank you.